Okay, hi, welcome back. So this time around, we're gonna talk about non-diegetic UI. Okay, so basically, it's a UI that is not actually in the game world. Okay, so basically, non-diegetic UI is like kind of like if you are the game character inside the game. Okay, is you cannot see the UI or the interface that you are looking at. So this UI right can only be seen by the player playing the game. Okay, so that's kind of like the difference between diegetic and non-diegetic. Okay, so the generally the basic of non-diegetic UI right is your typical UI that you always see on your game. Okay, so from the in-game to the menu, they are kind of like all non-diegetic. Okay, so in today's tutorial, right, we are gonna cover like a very simple way to, a very basic way to create menu, using different font and where you can get the font and joining up the different scenes together and some other possible improvement that you can do for your UI. Right, so over here you can see it's a UI from Persona 5. Right, so it's actually very fancy, very active, but we are not gonna do that complicated stuff. Right, I mean if you want to do such complicated stuff, you can make use of animators and stuff and eventually stack them up all the features together lah. Okay, so creating a menu is pretty straightforward. In this our menu, okay, we're just gonna have a background. Okay, we're gonna create a new scene first, then a background, then followed by a title text. Okay, just a simple one. Okay, and a couple of buttons. Okay, so that buttons will lead us to our various levels, and as well as to exit the game. Okay, so also for nicer text, right, you may want to use this additional feature called Text Mesh Pro. Okay, that's something additional that you can look out for. But for a start, we'll just use the normal text. Right, so coming over to my Unity. So basically, okay, we're gonna join up these three levels later. So the very first thing we want to do, right, is to create a new scene. Okay, we're gonna call it menu. Then go into the menu. Okay, so inside the menu, right, first thing first, we want to create our background lah. So for that, right, you can just create a image. Okay, so under the hierarchy, right, you can right click that image. Oops, UI first, then after that image. Okay, so after that we need to bring in a sprite. Okay, so on my desktop I already have a simple background that I'm gonna bring it into Unity itself. Okay, I'm just gonna throw on the assets, and before I can drag into the component, right, I will need to change it to a sprite. So click on the image that you have dragged in, then the texture check type, click on the sprite. Okay, and remember to click apply. Right, so after which, right, then I can then drag my background onto my sprite. Okay, and we will need to resize our background. Okay, because you can see this white color line is actually our background and this is our image. Okay, so we gotta kind of scale it like pretty much bigger. Oops, let's just click on the scale and like really big. Okay, so for the images, you can either yeah, I mean if you want, you can draw yourself, but I wouldn't expect you to draw yourself. If not, then you can find something. You can take a screenshot of part of your game as a background as well. That's also possible. Okay, I mean how you want to design your background and stuff, I will leave that to your creativity. Okay, so this is kind of like our simple background. Then next, you want to create a title button, title text. So again, UI text. As mentioned, if you want fancier text, you can use Text Mesh Pro. Okay, so for us, we're just gonna use a basic text. Then I'm just gonna call. Okay, and again, we're gonna have like a very tiny text here. Okay, so you can maybe click on this button, make the text box bigger. Okay, and we're gonna make it like really big, maybe 72. Okay, and maybe let's get it white color. Okay, we want to also centralize it. Okay, so a couple of things, let's zero it, everything. Okay, zero this as well. Okay, so for this text, we're gonna try to move it a little bit higher. Maybe we're gonna make it even bigger. Okay, 140, when it's too big, right, it kind of get cropped away. So you want to extend your size of your text box. Okay, right, so this is kind of like our title. So as for every time when we create canvases and stuff, right? Okay, you want to make sure you scale your canvas, right? If not, when you have different screen resolution, right, you have problem. Okay, so to do that, right, we'll just click on our canvas, and then we'll click on the canvas, okay, scaler, and set it to scale. Okay, so this will actually set the scale with the screen size. Then we can quickly resize again. Now it's way too big. Okay, kind of like that. Okay, so with that done, right, you can actually see it will scale down with our size of our screen. Okay, so that is kind of like our title. Next, this font is like the default Arial font, which is pretty default. Okay, to make it a little bit different, okay, you can actually go to website like dafont.com. Okay, you can find fonts here, and you can kind of like download them and then bring them into Unity. Okay, so for what I have here, I already downloaded one of the fonts from dafont.com. So it's just called blacklisted, and I gotta bring this font onto Unity itself. Okay, same thing, throw it there. Gotta click on my text and then drop my font in. Okay, so now I got a slightly more fancy text for more more special font lah in a way. Okay, so with that done, okay, we're gonna next do our buttons. So we're gonna right click on the canvas UI and we're gonna click on button. So similarly with buttons, right, there's another option for Touch Mesh Pro, but for this case we're just gonna use the basic one as well. Okay, so if you look at our slides, right, we have done the title text, and the next thing we want to do is actually the buttons as well. Okay, so same thing, our button, you can put a background and stuff. You can also add animation and stuff, but for now we're just gonna implement the feature. Okay, so button, we're gonna make probably 4 button. Okay, so maybe level 1 and level 3, and lastly is to quit. Okay, so basically 3 button. Then we kind of organize them separately. Maybe minus 40, minus 80, minus 120, and minus 160. Okay, and we're just gonna quickly align them. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, right, is to change the font inside the button, right? So we need to go and open one of the button, go to the text, and we can type in our captions, our text there. Okay, so that's level 1, level 2, level 3, and lastly quit. Okay, right, so that's kind of we got our button, and again we can change the font. Okay, and if you want, you can always make your button a little bit bigger. Okay, maybe we don't want to scale them, but rather we want to change the height to maybe 45 or something. Nah, maybe to 40. Okay, maybe something like that. Okay, and if you didn't like the color, of the button, right, you can also change it. Okay, so maybe you want to have something maybe you want to have something more like opaque and stuff. You can. Nah, that's not readable. Okay, it's okay. Okay, tell you what, I will just leave it at default. Okay, so for now we'll keep the button as like this. Okay, so you want, you can change the color, you can change the font, etc, etc. Okay, so all this is up to your design and your creativity. Okay, so what else? Okay, so we have mentioned all this. So what else is basically the next part? We have got our button, we have got our different scenes, and we want to join all these scenes up together. So there's a couple of steps. So the very first thing we need to do, right, is to include all the scenes that we're gonna move from each other, okay, into the build settings, okay, which is a shortcut for using Control Shift B. Okay, so by pressing Control Shift and B, okay, I'll get this build settings thing. Okay, so the thing I want to do here, right, is to bring all my scene, okay, level 1, level 2, level 3, as well as menu onto my build settings. Right, so take note the order matters. So make sure your menu is in the first one because it will be the first scene that your player will see. Okay, once that is done, okay, we will actually move on to writing some codes, okay, inside the game manager to load the scene, as well to quit the game. Okay, but take note, quit the game, you need to build the exe before you can quit. Okay, so let's dive into. Okay, we do not have a game manager here. Okay, let's just create a empty. Let's say called menu manager. Okay, then we're gonna add a menu manager script. Okay, so let's double click this. Okay, so inside our menu manager, there's a few scenes that we want to perform. So we want to go level 1, 2, 3, and lastly quit. So I'm gonna write a few functions for that. So there has to be public on level 1. Okay, so same thing, we're gonna create a few for level 2 and 3, and then lastly quit. Okay. So again, the function name, you can up to you to decide. If you, let's say you don't press, you want to click on enter as well. I mean, it's fine. It's up to you. Okay, and lastly is on quit press. Okay. So the next thing, right, we want to do is to add a code to change the scene. Okay, because we are using scenes manager, so we need to include a namespace. Okay, include the scene management namespace. Then now we can use scene manager. So this inside we will put our scene name. Okay, so take note this scene name has to be the same as the one that is in your scene. Okay, so notice mine doesn't have a space. Okay, so I will have to make sure I do not have a space here. Okay, now I can do the same for level 2 and level 3. Okay, and lastly for on quit, right? Okay, it's slightly different. Okay, so it's on quit, right? So we can now go back to our Unity. Okay, we can test. Okay, so we cannot test the quit. The quit is the only one that we cannot test. Okay, so before we can get this thing to work, we need to link them up. So when we click on our button again, okay, so button object, so you can see there's this on click function. Okay, so this is the place whereby when I click, okay, I need to call my menu manager, okay, which is a game object, and the script is called the menu manager script, and the function that I want to call is on level 1 pressed. Okay, so you can do the same for both level 2 and 3. So I will do them very quickly. Okay, so if you are familiar with this step, feel free to fast forward to skip. Okay. So lastly for quit. Okay. So that's our 4 button. So if you test by running, you should be able to go to scene 1. Okay. So my scene 1, 2, 3 right, is just a 1 button there. Okay. Right. So yeah, that's kind of like how you create a very quick and simple menu for your level. So, I mean, feel free to spice it up, create some animation, some animated background and stuff. Okay. Right, so we have covered all of this. Okay, you have to include all the scenes in your build settings. Use the use the scene manager to load the scene with the name, and quit application.quit to quit the game. And then lastly, to use onClick function, right, to kind of like piece them out all together. Okay. So what other improvement? Okay, before we go over to other improvement, some of the things that we have to also do, okay, is that when we are in our level 1, right, okay, when we play, then after that, when we want to end, we want to go on to the second level. Okay. Unless you got a button to return. Okay. Right. So we're gonna change this restart, okay, to go on to the next level. So but to change that, right, we'll basically just go on to our game over UI, look for our button, change the text to maybe next level. Okay. Right. And we are also gonna edit the code. So instead of restarting the level, we're gonna go to our game manager and open our game manager script by double clicking it. And we want to look for the function that resets the game. Okay. So instead of reset the game now, okay, I want to go on to my next level, which is my level. Hmm. Okay, because I depending on where am I going. Okay, so I will probably need to get in a parameter. So instead of reset game, I will take a parameter string, scene name. Okay. So instead of I go to the next index, I will go to the scene name that I pass in. Okay. So if we come back to here, our button. So we need to go click game manager, reset game. Okay, and we're gonna say level 2. Okay, because we are at level 1 currently. So this should bring us to level 2 upon us clicking the next level button. Okay, so level 2 cannot be looped because okay. Oh, okay, so same problem. So basically I did a mistake. I typed a space in the 2. Okay, so I gotta remove that. Let's try again. Okay, so now I'm at level 2. Okay, so same thing for level 2 is to go to level 3. So I'm gonna do the same for my HUD open game over UI and our button. Okay, so I'm gonna reset up the reset game function. This time level 3. Okay, remember not to have a space. Okay, so let's just quickly test this. Okay, so now we're at level 3. Right, so when we are at level 3, okay, we're gonna click on our HUD again and go straight to our button. Okay, and for this, we're gonna do the same thing. And we're gonna find the reset game and we're gonna type. So instead of going to level 4, which is don't have, we're gonna go back to menu. Okay. Right, so that will bring us back to our menu. Right, we can now go from our menu straight to level 3. Okay, but let's say from level 2, I want to go straight back to our menu. We couldn't, right? Because we need to have a button. So if that's the feature that you need, right? Okay, save. You can go back to your level 2 or maybe even level 1. Let's just go level 1. Okay, you can just quickly create another button for him. Okay, so this button, let's just maybe move it to the top right corner. Then maybe you can rename it to menu, right? Okay, I mean you can also set images for the button and stuff. It need not need to be always like a text and a box kind of thing. Okay, so again on our button, we go to our component. We're gonna add our game manager. And we're just gonna take advantage of the reset game function and tell it to go back to menu instead. Okay. So now we will have a button that will bring us back to our menu on level 1. Okay. Right. So from our level 1 where we win, okay, we can choose to go next level or we can go back to menu. Okay. So this will actually depends on your game flow eventually. Right. Okay, so that is kind of like what you can do to make your level continuous from 1, 2 and until 3 and then go back to the menu. Okay, and also partially another way to navigate around your scenes. Right. So with that said, what else can we do if let's say we are very fast? Okay, a couple of things more you can do. You can change the font in your game. So basically in your level, right, all your level 1, level 2, level 3, right. So as usual, the UI again is our default Arial font text. Okay, so you can feel free to always go and change the font type, okay, to something more interesting and more exciting. Right? Because I mean, if everybody is using Arial, then what makes your game different from others, right? So this is kind of like a way for you to design your game, make it looks kind of like different from others, you know. Okay. But of course, every time when you change font and stuff, you may need to reposition your your text position a bit. Okay. Right. Always remember to save your work. Yeah. Right. So other stuff you can do is kind of like doing like instead of numbers for your ammo and health, right? You can use implement things like a scroll bar kind of stuff. Okay. Instead of like bullet, you can give it some avatar for like a gun to show how many bullets you have instead of like ammo 40 and stuff. Okay. I mean, you can also consider having a mini map if you want, right? Because if you remember, we talked about non-diegetic UI, right? Is that this player character that's in the game, he will not be able to see all this UI. Okay, all this UI element is only visible to the person playing the game in front of the computer. Okay, so all these are called your non-diegetic UI. Okay, you can as well also add a compass, but of course that will require you to find out where's the destination that you're supposed to go to, and as well as you know, and as well as right, kind of like map it, the angle and stuff onto the screen, right? And apart from your in-game UI, right, you also got your win-lose UI if you remember. Okay, so instead of game over, win also game over, lose also game over, you may want to design different kind of UI for win and for lose. Okay, that's kind of you can differentiate lah. So I mean, one way you can do is you can like group them up. So if let's say example, if you win, then you show maybe you disable one group of the UI and show the other group. And if you let's say if you win, then you show the other group, vice versa. So that's kind of how you determine which UI to show. Likewise, apart from just winning and losing, you can also let the user know how much he has scored, how well has he done and stuff. Right, as well as kind of like in the PUBG game, right, you have some slogan like winner winner chicken dinner, right? So these are some of the stuff that you can put. And for our game, definitely we won't have ranking as well, right? But we can consider adding kills. You can count how many creeps that it has killed, right? And so there's kind of like quite a few things that you can do along the way to make your UI different from others. I think one more thing that I did not type in the improvement is basically instead of like static number, right? If let's say if your health is gonna move from like 10 to 20, let's say maybe 100 to 90 to 80 to 70, etc., right? In steps of 10. Okay, instead of like 100, 90, 80, 70, right? You can do it in a running sequence, right? So basically, you can implement kind of like a running numbers, running from like maybe 100 to 90, right? And 90 to 80. So it can be in a running sequence. And you can have some effects that it make it blink and stuff, so that it kind of let the player know, hey, your health is, you're losing health, right? So these are some of the stuff that you can implement to make your game a little bit more interesting for the player. Okay, I think that's kind of all for this non-diegetic UI. It's the kind of like the most basic form of UI that you can do in games, right? I mean, the next few tutorial we're gonna look at is meta and special UI. Okay, so those are kind of a little bit different as compared to our very standard UI, so called. Okay, right. If not, then that's it for me. Right. Thank you. So and good luck. Have fun.